if us degenerates have a Bible, it just says variance on the front for like the aliens from Toy Story. Or the squishy things. We look up at the claw and we say variance. That is our guiding principle.
You make that graphic?
That is the three of us looking up at variance claw.
But just our heads on the little alien bodies.
Yes.
Area. Rolling.
Take it easy.
Start.
Get your hand down your pants.
Start.
Jeez. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. If you are new to Misfit Athletics, if you are new to this show, this is a special edition Phase 3 podcast where we give you a peek behind the curtain. We take you in depth on how we program, why we program, what you can expect that's coming up. And if you're a Misfit OG, you're already a member of the family. I think we just have to take a second to tip our caps to you. We are filming this within the smack dab in the middle of retest week, and you guys are fucking crushing retest week.
Annihilating.
Like Ted thinks he has the best thing to repost, and he reposts it, and then 19 more people one up that same person. And it's, I mean, from our chairs, from where we sit, from what we do, and what our goals are, it's motivating for us. I think that's probably the easiest way to put it. You guys are really buying in not only to the programming itself, but the concepts surrounding, the mental game and the lifestyle and all this other stuff that we put out. It's very obvious that you're doing that, and that is massively motivating for us to keep doing what we're doing.
I would say the big bias here too is they're not just lifts. Like historically, everyone gets jazzed up because a lift comes back. You've worked on it for a phase. You add 15 pounds to the barbell, you slam it, you're celebrating it. But a lot of the things I've seen are conditioning test PRs, and not like measly 1 or 2 second PRs, but like the kettlebell snatch assault bike thing. I'm seeing people PR by 40, 45 seconds in a workout that, there's the opportunity to grow a ton in, but you have to go to a very dark place to do so. So like tip my cap on that. And then I'm just stoked to see the 8K times starting to roll in. A couple of good tags this morning on that. People just really taking all of the hard work they've put in on the C2 bike, getting it translating over to long running and seeing like big PRs. So to me, I just love people are not only doubling down on the fact they're getting better at lifting, but better at fitness overall.
Yeah. Still got that nice assault bike piece coming the anaerobic retest. So yeah, we'll see. Let's see how many tags we get for Ted on that retest day. But also, like, quick shout out. I know this isn't the affiliate podcast, but we've had a shitload of PRs from the affiliate program as well, and that will start. Phase 3 will start right coinciding with the MFT phase. So a lot of PRs with the affiliate lifting and Metcon as well.
Yeah, it's I think it's front and center, of our minds, because across the street here is Misfit Gym Portland, and the coaches make it a point to sort of mark out the PRs, and there's so many of them now that it's like sort of a bit of a internal battle of, your classes 60, 70, 80, 90% PRs, especially on things like a deadlift, where you're like, man, it comes up less often than fucking Christmas.
For real.
Some sort of eclipse. You're the little kid
over
out.
Half the people who walk through the door PR, and it's
exactly.
Like 60%'s like kind of low relative to the last few phases. So, but
bummer. Damn,
yeah, man, only over half the gym PR'd their 1 rep max deadlift, and a lot of them all time too.
That's another thing that's pretty cool is there are people at this gym that have been training with us for going on a decade, damn near a decade, and those same folks are seeing lifetime PRs and something that, like, we talk about beginner gains going away.
James's 500-pound deadlift was stupid.
Video
so
silly.
Fast.
Yeah, I tried to get him to another one, but I think we had used all the magic on that first PR. But now I was like, damn it, I wish I told you to go a little heavier on that instead of 500. But hey, hit a lifetime goal of 500, and for him being a remote client, someone I've worked with for the last 4 years, to see him. I mean, he's told me we met this past week, in the last 6 months, he's PR'd 7 or 8 different lifts lifetime from he's been training since probably back when you and I started training 10 plus years ago, to have lifetime PRs.
And as a collegiate rower before that, so not an athletic schlep by any means.
No, not at all. So to me, that was really cool to see.
Yeah, we always brag on the podcast about how smart our business partners are for proper and why we chose them. And then she pulls a 305 lifetime PR. He pulls 500. And it's like,
I don't know what
that's the kind of,
I don't know what her 1 rep max looked like, but I'm guessing it's probably could have been heavier too.
It was textbook.
Yeah.
It was textbook. Right. It was great. We're going to set the tone right now for this podcast with the grip test.
It doesn't set the tone for me.
Let's
sorry.
Fucking go.
What else you got? You got something else I can try?
You got a new idea you can pitch?
It doesn't set any tone for me, bro.
There you go.
Oh, weird. It says broken.
We going offhand? No. Oh, you wound up for that. All right. I won't make you go off.
End this. I'm sick of this
Break
shit.
it.
Oh,
Grip
it's
test
broken.
is over. I'm going to order 20 of them from Amazon. Do we have backup?
That actually sounded good. You in the 150s?
But it's not great.
What is it?
147.8.
Oh, that's not.
That's
Were
cute.
you in the 130s last
pedestrian.
time?
That's pretty good for you,
Pretty
though.
pedestrian.
Part of me wants to go like 80% and see if I can beat Sherb.
Can't. So try it. Try it. Yeah, try it.
It gets like 12.
Go for it. Try it.
That didn't feel good. 152. That did not feel good.
Still got it. That's all that matters. Okay.
It was 161 last week.
These fingers just all
goodness.
broke.
I'm kind of hurt.
170?
163.
Scrub. Last week I almost beat you this
We
week.
really need I really want to, when we finally hang these photos up, we also need a really shitty looking whiteboard that just keeps track of wins and losses.
I like that.
Yeah. It's got to
I
be
like
like really garbage. Maybe we just write on the wall.
With
Like Ted
boogers.
would like that with
Like,
boogers.
pick our noses.
Yeah.
We'll streak on the wall.
Booger wall?
Well,
It's like the gum wall.
We could put a height thing up there too.
I might
like,
have one of those in my
this is
house,
how
the
high-
couch,
this is how
booger
tall
couch.
you are. Booger couch.
You're the one recommending that we have a height chart?
We'll give him a BMI chart. I win. 1-0.
All right, fitness.
All right, fitness.
Phase 3, do it.
Phase 3, do it. So again, we're trying to give a peek behind the curtain. We've talked about, we've sort of had this journey of where we fit into the ecosystem as athletes, LOL, coaches, programmers, all this stuff. And I know all of us can either think about the type of programming that we're doing now that we actually follow, but especially back in the day, this idea of proof of concept and what that means to an athlete. So for us, it's so important to put out there, here are the identifiers of your progress. How can you get there? This is why we program that way, because we know how important proof of concept is to an athlete that really gives a shit about something. Like, to me, when I'm working with an athlete and you get the athlete that is all in and really kind of buys in but doesn't care that much about the details, I think that becomes frustrating. And if you go back and listen to our last episode, we talk about the athlete IQ. We talk about what it means to be the type of athlete that is a student of the game. And that's why we put these podcasts out there. I also think that if you're a coach / programmer at any level, Team Misfit, Misfit Athletics, or outside of our ecosystem, that this type of podcasts, just makes sense to listen to.
And we talk about this stuff all the time, but what I thought was really interesting, I think you wrote the copy for it on Instagram for our post about the heavy deadlift, strict handstand push-up, box jump. There are some things in there that say, how can you improve today, or how do you know that you've PR'd in this workout? And what I thought was really interesting there, and I think that people should really know about training, is that yes, some things are very objective. You went faster, you did more rounds, you lifted more weights. But I thought one of the things that was really thought provoking there, and I hope that people take a second to read the captions and those things, is that, you could have a breakthrough with, I transitioned with less time. I took the opportunity to take a deep breath in, and that let me stay focused, and I held on to a couple extra reps. So it were some more subjective things in training that sometimes I think get overlooked and kind of add up to an athlete's IQ, an athlete IQ. So, I thought that it's really interesting to say, hey, you don't always have to hang your hat on only numbers, that sometimes things feeling better lead to, not a PR today, but PRs down the road. So something I just want to double down on is saying that when you have a test week like this, look for as many victories as possible, not just the one single, did I go faster or did I go slower?
Yeah. All right. So we always begin the conversation here with the lifting that we're going to do. I'm going to very quickly reference what the lifting is, and then we're going to get into why we're doing what we're doing, what sort of progressions we've had, the ones that are coming in the future phases. So our phase peaking lift is the snatch. I don't want to say everyone's favorite, but it's kind of everyone's favorite, right?
It is what it is. Yeah, it's everyone's favorite.
It's everyone's favorite. We're going to work on deadlift skill work, back squat speed work with post-activation potentiation, which we'll go over here in a second. Your GPP work is going to be the clean. Really what that means is that you are going to be doing the phase peaking style, the skill style, and the speed style all within one phase. You're going to go through a rotation to make sure that after doing what you just did with your clean to really peak it, can you now put it into all of these different categories and flourish? Our in-WOD lifting is the front squat. I think that's just a little tip of the cap to the season is coming. It's on the way, so it's time to start front squatting, and you're going to get more heavy front squatting. Most of the heavy front squatting that is traditional strength style stuff you will see within the comp blocks, which come after phase 4. Both of your optional lifts within this phase will get you better at the snatch. So one of the things that you just saw in phase 2 is we did the clean pull and clean deadlift work that coincided with making sure that your first pull was good to go as you went heavier and heavier through your standard progression on the clean. When it comes to the snatch, we're not sacrificing as much of our central nervous system, as high of a percentage of that gas tank that we always talk about. So we can add that third day a week in there. So you could potentially have your standard linear progression, less reps, more weight,
percentage work
as the phase goes on. Then you can do the pull and the deadlift, and you can also go through sort of a positional complex to make sure that all that skill work that you just did is still there. Like, we cannot stress enough that I don't want to say there's no point to it, but it's not worth it to spend 7 weeks just obsessing over the details on your snatch, the previous 7 weeks on the tempo snatch. Like, these things happen in progression so that you can have a reference point and use them when it comes to pulling really heavy. So easier said than done, but keep it, at the forefront.
I like to use the example of say the phrase that, like, your skill unlocks your strength in the snatch. Like, until you are skilled with the movement itself, you can be brutally strong. You can have a 600-pound deadlift, squat 500, but snatch 225. It's not that you're not strong enough, is that you haven't figured out the skill left. So to me, the way I like to think of the optional lifts specifically in something like the snatch is it's allowing you to close the gap between you and your competitors. You notice around the gym that you might have the lowest number amongst you and your friends. You're like, all right, like, when I'm picking my extra piece for this upcoming phase, if I have a huge glaring weakness in the snatch, I know that one of my optional pieces that I should pick from each week is the snatch work, either the positional work or the pulls, because it's clear that I have that giant gap in my fitness. And until I figure out the skill of that, I'm not going to be able to apply my strength. So to me, I like to really take the optional pieces and really dig deep and be like, all right, what is the biggest gap in my game? And if it's lifting, like for some of you, it's going to be out there, it's going to be lifting. You have to pour as much energy and effort into picking that additional lift piece and treating it as if it were a skill session until you get those fundamentals cemented. And then we can start talking about, can we go faster? Can we go more complex? But definitely take the opportunity to close the gap on your peers if you have an optional lift and you're not great at that movement.
It's also worth noting that the way that this stuff is structured is, especially with the skill and the high CNS lift, we almost always try to get, hey, you're going to focus on the skill of the lift and then try to peak it in strength. So last phase 2, we're wrapping up. We worked on this tempo snatch pulls, and people actually are now pulling the bar at what is actually probably like the correct speed off the floor instead of ripping it off the ground at 100 miles an hour. But that wasn't just like, hey, you're going to practice this exercise for 7 weeks. It was, hey, we identified this as a deficiency within the community as a whole. You need to work on this, and then we are going to continue by allowing you to load up the bar a little bit more, but it should not be thought of as kind of this independent thing where we just practice this like weird slow the snatch down sort of thing for 7 weeks. And now it's like, okay, that's gone. It's not like, it's not like the test in high school where you just learned everything and then dumped it as soon as the test was over. So, and we're going to continue to do that with the other, we did that in phase 1 into phase 2 with the clean snatch as well.
Yeah, and to clarify, it's actually even deeper than what you're mentioning, because that was the tempo snatch pull was phase 1. Then phase 2 was the positional work, and now phase 3 is the peaking. So you're talking about a 21-week program that brings you from, let's nail down, what these positions look like without stopping. Let's actually stop them and make sure that we're good to go there. And the thing that we harp on a lot within these podcasts is that what we believe is one of the separators of Misfit Athletics is we have our variable training system where we put down what we believe is mandatory that everybody needs to tackle. And then there's a whole lot more. We're actually, Hunter's going to get into a little bit how much more later on, but there's so much more that's built into this program where we're expecting you to go in and pick pieces and choose and really sort of personalize what you're doing. So that this snatch one might be the easiest example that we have all year to explain what we're trying to do with lifting. There's 3 scenarios right now. You're going into this phase and you are a monster with the snatch. Congratulations. You are going to add some weight and you're going to eke out a 5-10 pound PR at the end. That's awesome. You are excellent at pulling under a barbell. Not so much off the floor. I can raise my hand in this scenario. I would want to add in the snatch pull and snatch deadlifting. Okay. There's actually 4 scenarios. Sorry. Scenario number 3, you're good off the floor, but your positions are, you're not really actively pulling under the bar all that well. You are going to do the mandatory work, and then you're going to choose that skill complex. Coach, I am a fucking dumpster fire when I snatch, and I need to fix this. We have a plan for you. If you buy in and do those 3 days, and if you take your time and watch the content that we're doing, putting all this stuff out there, you will be able to improve. We promise you that. So these are, this is the perfect example of how we can say, okay, we are focusing on the snatch, but within the exact same program that everybody gets, that everybody can try for 2 weeks for free. There are 4 options of how you could get better at that. And I think, again, that's probably one of our best examples throughout the course of the year to just, have a snippet that says, this is what we mean when we say this is variable. So Hunter alluded to it already. We're just going to talk a little bit about these progressions that we have and the fact that, we have gotten to the point where, we obsess over the specific workouts. We all have to defend our workouts when we write them, committee style, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm thinking, all the way down to, 24 of those doesn't take 19 seconds. I fucking watch, we go that deep. And then because we've done that so much, we come back around to this year and it's like, how do we get better? How do we get better at what we do? Okay, we sit down, we have that same argument over it's this lift, then this lift, then this lift, and we go through. And Hunter pulled off the fucking impossible by convincing me to move the back squat volume phase. Yeah. I don't move in that. That's my fucking Mona Lisa. I'm not moving it. And then he presented an idea that made way more sense than mine. And I had to leave.
Well, it's good. That's a good point as we get closer to the comp block, we've got phase 4 next, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the season is now kind of within view. It's still kind of at the end of the tunnel, but that light is visible. Yep. So now understanding that all of these things are tying in with the goal of kind of wherever your CrossFit games are, whether it's actually the CrossFit games in August, it's trying to get to a semifinal, or it's just trying to hammer the quarterfinals. All of this stuff is teeing you up for that.
Yes, it is. So we talked about the skill on the snatch going to the CNS. That's fairly self-explanatory. It actually goes back to skill again, because we believe that the movement itself within the snatch is the most important part. That's not the case essentially with things like a deadlift or a back squat. You gotta put your damn, you gotta put some weight on to have that happen. With the back squat, it's interesting. We go speed work, and I'll explain the post activation potentiation right now. So you're going to do traditional speed work, sort of borrowed and tweaked from the Louis Simmons style, roughly 60%, 60 to 70% range. You're going to be doing triples. You're going to load the way that you normally would, and then stand up as fast as you can. What happens with an athlete that does not have those fast twitch fibers already developed, it's harder for them to benefit, right? Yep. So if I have them, if I have a lot of them and Hunter doesn't have as much, I am getting exponentially better while I'm squatting 60%, whereas he may or may not be getting that same benefit from it. But what we do know is that all CrossFitters can be explosive without the weight on their back. And we can actually put those things together. And there's peer-reviewed research on this, where you're going to be doing your set of 3 back squats, and then you're going to go over and you're going to do the seated box jump. I think it's important to note, this is sort of like a specific side tangent, but the height of the box doesn't matter unless you can't convince yourself to be explosive by making the box high.
Yeah.
If you can convince yourself to extend your hips as aggressively as you can, and the box is 24 inches, 30 inches, that's fine. It does not matter. That hip extension is what we're looking for. We are not looking for someone to mute their hip and drive their knees to their chest like you would as an efficient CrossFit movement.
Not a CrossFit box jump. This is a traditional plyometric explosive jump.
So now we have a solution within one session for both ends of the spectrum. And then obviously that means everyone in between.
Yeah, this always ties back into the thing we talk about in podcasts, that like the stimulus is what matters more so than the actual movement. So kind of this is a perfect demonstration of someone who is trying to get better at speed work, trying to get themselves stronger, but struggles to find the way to do that. And this is something we've experimented in using Team Misfit gyms and practicing this at a different level and seeing, all right, does the PAP training actually lead to more PRs for our athletes? And what's great about having Misfit Gym Portland across the street here is we have our own little lab that we can put people against and kind of see where they're at. And you kind of, you can thank essentially Hunter for like digging into the weeds here and saying, hey, we should try this at Team Misfit. And, I think the first phase we did it, was it with back squat? Was that back squat or deadlift the first time?
It was back squat.
I think we had like a 77 PR rate. And again, in a gym that has very established athletes, people have been training for years and years, but it was just the ability to help athletes get stronger because now they're able to create a force that previously they weren't able to do with squatting alone. So, I want to say that like, it might feel like a throwaway thing. Like I'm doing my squats, coach, good. I'm screw getting the boxes out and do it. Do it, everyone. You'll get better for it. It's going to help you get stronger.
And why does it matter? Like the beginning of the podcast, why does it matter that how the athletes perform and how they buy in motivates us? We know that our speed work works, and we're still trying to figure out how to make it better.
Yeah, how can we be better?
Every single time.
Always.
So we go from that to the volume cycle is now in phase 4, which again, getting me to move that. I'm just saying, it was a thing. It was a whole thing. I had to go home and take a nap and come back, wrap my mind around it.
What'd you have to do? Go for a walk?
But the idea here is you have done your heavy deadlift and you've done your heavy clean, and then you're going to do your heavy back squat, and your legs are going to be fucking under you, and your pulling is going to be there. You're going to be legitimately the strongest version of yourself as you go to peak your clean and jerk. And we peak the clean and jerk leading into times like the open and like quarterfinals, because that can ruin your season. You can be the fittest mamma jamma out there, and sorry, clean and jerk's not there. Everyone's been there at that point where that can become the deciding factor. So we prioritized, okay, how do we make the snatch and the clean and jerk as high as possible when we get into the season? So that clean and jerk, you will be peaking your clean and jerk during the open. You will be ready to fucking rock with all that stuff during the open. And for most people that probably care a little bit more about being ready for quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Deadlift, we go from skill into GPP. So this phase specifically, you are going to be doing deadlift skill. We are bringing back the tempo work. For the love of all that is holy, please make it actual tempo work. What I can
send
say,
Hunter to your gym and he'll scream out the tempo.
what I can say in defense of my beloved Misfit athlete community is that the athletes that do not actually do tempo, you can tell they think they are, and they're at least thinking a lot more about the way that they move, right?
Yeah.
Still benefit.
Like I do not see, no offense, I do see some bad deadlifts out there from time to time. It happens. I don't see very many during the skill phase, and that is the point. We are making sure that we are hitting these positions. So that's what happens now. And then going into the open, it's GPP. You better be ready for either a heavy pull or high rep or whatever. We're going to make sure in phase 4 that you're good to go for that. But we're going to fucking pause in phase 3. We're going to say, well, literally, we're going to just slow it down and say, okay, let's make sure that I'm moving the way that I want to. Because your 1 rep max strength doing the fucking Castro deadlift is not going to help you even if it's 600 pounds once the open comes around.
No.
Especially because it's always got overhead in it and your back feels like you got beaten with a stick. Last but not least, we are doing the clean GPP. So referenced it already, but basically you are coming off of that 1 rep max. We just said it. We're saying it again. We keep saying the same things for the same lifts or for different lifts because of how important it is. I love that you have a great squat clean, but what does it look like with the in WOD lifting, with the front squat? What does it look like now as we mix it up week to week? It's like, okay, week 1, this is my wheelhouse. Week 2, oof, it's not. Now now you can sort of plan accordingly to go through there. The one thing that I will note that was sort of an interesting journey this year is our testing is typically based on has been in the past on peaking the phase lift. Like that's the test. Your lifting test is you do your 1 rep max and then you do it back out the other side. And we sort of talked about like 5 weeks seems to be the sweet spot of like truly biasing that thing. So what do we do in week 1 and week 7? Are we going to bore everyone with sort of that like deload kind of vibe? And it originally started out as, you know what? Like this is a stressful week for a lot of athletes. Throw them a bone and give them some tests that seem fun. But now what we're seeing is there's a higher buy-in because of that idea that they can have proof of concept. So they get to test something very specific. Then they have 5 weeks of working on it, and then they get to see how they're doing at the end. So it's just kind of cool for me to put out there that at first it was just like, these aren't the most important part of the week, so let's just give them something fun. And it ended up being the type of thing where we found a higher buy-in from athletes, and they do love things like the 3-position snatch or the back squat where you add a certain amount on the EMOM
ladder,
and,
like
all that different
stuff. Seems like it applies to our sport more. It has a better application and crossover for when you're actually
That's
being
true
tested.
too. It's true testing practice.
Yeah, it's not just like, hey, the sun's shining, the birds are chirping, you get this perfect setup, go PR your split jerk. Like you actually have the opportunity to work on something like in the way that's actually going to be tested at a competition, or if you were to go compete, what it would look like on the floor.
All right, Misfits, just a quick break to shout out our show sponsors and hopefully save you a little bit of money. Every freaking person in this room uses Pure Spectrum CBD, whether it's the tincture, whether it's the salve. If you're feeling frisky, leveling up to that black label and getting, the level of milligrams per serving, that's really going to move the needle for you. I would say that I use the 2,500 milligram, but I do 2 full droppers every single day when I leave work for that. So that's technically the 5,000. It's probably more financially advantageous. Note to self, but you can head to purespectrumcbd.com and find that black label tincture. You can also use the code word Misfit and save some money every single time.
We are also brought to you by Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co to save. Use the code word Misfit to save on any order. And as Drew was just saying a second ago, looking to level up your game, Proper Fuel has everything that you need to level up your game. You have your pre-workout with Proper Pre, both stim and non-stim options if you're someone that works out in the morning versus the evening. Biggest difference there is a cup of coffee's worth of stimulants in there, of caffeine. Then afterwards, if you're looking for the best way to recover from your hard session, we have Proper Recovery, has carbs, electrolytes, protein, all the good things that you need there. And if you're someone that's been on the fence for a really long time, you looked at the jug, you're like, you know what, I'm hesitant to try something new. We also now have single serves on our sites. If you're someone looking to try Proper Fuel, you now have a great opportunity to try our awesome product, both pre and post workout. Get everything you need, level up. And again, you can use the code word Misfit to save on your first order of Proper Pre.
I have the quickest anecdote. I have been doing my warm up, then pre-workout, then my zone 2 work. And I can tell you that instead of taking it before my warm-up, I am able to push harder at the end of my workout. So counterintuitive to if you're going to do a really intense Metcon, make sure you get it in like 30 minutes early. I've been testing it and I've been noticing the back half of my zone 2 is much better when I take it right before I get started.
Noted. What about the single serve, boys?
What about them? They exist. They're on the site. We talked about them.
He talked about them. We lost you there for a minute.
I must have blacked out. Here we are.
Where are we?
And we're back. And we are also brought to you by Sharpen the Axe. You can head to sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word Kiala.
Heyo.
Use the code word Kiala to save 10% and donate 10% to an awesome foundation. The Making Waves collection. If you like the hat that's currently on my grape, which I do. Not a big hat guy, but I like these ones. These are sweet.
It's that
I really like the color, the navy, the navy white combo, along with some other awesome swag that is now live. Again, head to sharpentheaxeco.com. Making Waves collection. Save with the code word Kiala.
You know what? You're listening to this podcast and you're like, the Goon Squad, they're fun and they know what they're talking about. Well, you can head to misfitathletics.com, the Sugar One Marketplace.
True.
TeamMisfit.com to try any of the programs that we are going into detail about for 2 weeks for free. All right, back to the show. All right, Sherb, let's talk about monostructural conditioning, also known as bitch work.
Bitch work. So in phase 1, not to go too far back, we bias the C2 bike to kind of get the legs ability to flush as we kind of move around. And then in phase 2, we focused on aerobic running, getting ourselves comfortable going longer distances. So we had the 8K trial, and now we're going to be prioritizing all of that capacity that we've developed in phase 1 and 2. And we want to see, all right, great, you've got good capacity. Let's see what it looks like when you're tested against something that's really, really, really nasty. So I don't know if we want to let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
But your anaerobic run test for the phase is going to be a 1K run as fast as you freaking can.
800 hurts pretty bad, so we thought we'd add 200 meters to it.
Yeah, like the elite level CrossFitters are going to run an 800 probably in the low 2s, 220s, 230s.
Low 2s?
Yeah, it's the lowish
like
2s.
220,
220 through 30, yeah. And then,
I guess that's low 2s.
And if you add
30 is not.
Add a nice fun 40, 45, 60 seconds to that. It's just in that really gross time. I mean, honestly, I think the conversation started with like
the time domain is the most important.
What is the 1K version of this? And 800 felt a little short. If you're talking about a 1K row versus that 800 meter run, it just feels a little bit shorter. So we're going to just up the ante a tiny bit. And you're going to have your anaerobic run test be the 1K run. And throughout the phase, you're going to have opportunities to run at that pace or faster for shorter intervals, with the idea of that, once we've built this robust capacity, we need to now ratchet up the speed so that you can take that capacity and apply it to doing better in a test like the 1K run. So
I have to interrupt because this is the one area where I can provide personal anecdotes. The rest of the podcast, I have nothing to fucking say about what I'm up to. But the single biggest thing that has helped my long distance running has been the C2 bike. Whenever I get into new ranges and going, running longer or faster, you start to have that feeling like you're pounding the pavement. Your legs become that limiting factor. And I mean, it was as obvious as can be. I used to do the fasted cardio where I'd add 10 minutes a week. And once I got past 30 or 40 minutes, the second I got to sort of new territory with how long I was running, my legs were dead.
Yep.
And I wasn't staring at my watch enough to manifest that mentally. I run all the time now. I also bike all the time now. I never feel that. So the idea of if you go out and you run and your legs just get decimated either afterwards or during, one of the best things that you can possibly do is get on the C2 bike and really log your time there. So that's part of that progression. And then not as a surprise at all when I run in Metcons now, or there's a bitch work piece extra in the Team Misfit programming, my shorter running, my recovery periods are so much better. So this is one of those things where my personal buy-in, knowing going into it that this type of thing can have that profound effect on someone who is, more of a traditional, sports athlete. I like that.
As you were speaking, I was thinking of one of those murder documentaries where they have the red yarn and tacks on the wall and they're connecting different things. But I can see the skill lift and going to a high CNS peaking lift being very similar in comparison to I'm building my aerobic capacity in something, and now I want to go and express how much work I've put in. And granted, they aren't exactly apples to apples. It's more like apples to oranges, but there is a little bit of, hey, I've spent enough time working at something. I've developed the ability to be able to do this without being so fucked up that I can't train the rest of the week. Now let's go out and express that and continue to further develop it. So You know, that's kind of how I was thinking of it as you were going through that. I could see the parallels between skill to high CNS lift to aerobic, now anaerobic focus in the bitch work for the upcoming phase. Moving on to the aerobic focus, we're going aerobic row now into CrossFit. And, you know, the last test we had that 400 calorie, 360 calorie long row piece. Again, building the nuts and bolts of the form, the technique, the ability to go long in a rower. And now as we're creeping into the season,
this test.
Yeah, these things now have to converge. We have to get ourselves ready to be coming out of this phase, ready to be in the CrossFit, you know, style of bitch work where you're going to have to row and do wall balls and double unders. Are you building that robust capacity ahead of that so that when you go to do that test in the following phase, you're not like, hey man, I didn't put my hours and my time in. And all of a sudden it's like, why do I feel like the biggest hole in my game is the row in this piece where, you know, I feel like I've taken the year and I've kind of separated these things apart and I'm ready to put them back together. Like one of the best ways to develop your overall fitness is to log hours on that erg. And I think all of us can speak from experience that when we row at a higher frequency more often, that generally we feel fitter than we do when we take a little time away from the rowing machine.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, the rower is the only machine that we see in like kind of the standard competition. We've seen the bike get thrown in and kind of like the sanctionals when that
you're
was
referencing almost every single person doesn't get to use another machine in the official CrossFit season.
Yeah, exactly. So like you have to be comfortable on the rower. And then when it comes to competing, whether it's in the open or quarterfinals, whatever it is, everybody always talks about, can I do these pull-ups? Can I do the wall balls unbroken? It's never a conversation about how fast do I need to be rowing. It's I'm going to row at whatever pace my capacity says I can row at. They almost treat it like they treat the rower like it's a barbell in that like, oh, it's a 1 rep max back squat. Like, well, my ceiling, I can only 1 rep max this. I can't try harder and back squat more. They almost treat the rower as just like, no, it's like you have to, and the best way to do that is to log your time. And when it's aerobic, you know, you're going to be sitting on that bitch for a few minutes at a time, at least. And you have to get comfortable with it. And I would 100% agree. C2 bike is a little bit different, but I think from a sport-specific perspective, you're not going to get more bang for your buck than spending time on the rower in order to prepare you to succeed in a competition.
And if you guys all think back, again, going back to the only time you get to test the machine is the rower in the situations you test them in, you're talking about like 19-1, you're doing rowing and wall balls. What can you hold over and over again? Because everyone's going to do those wall balls unbroken. You think back to 21.2, the hang clean and jerk toe to bar row. It's what can you hold for a calorie per hour? What's going to get you back on the other rounds faster?
You have to know that.
And if you go to regionals and you talk about chest to bar, handstand, push-ups deficit, it's what can you hold on the rower to keep you in the race. And it's not a, hey, can you send 20 calories really hard? Yes, you're going to do plenty of that in our bitch work, but it's what can you hold for a threshold pace? And what's nice about the upcoming phase is you're going to get the opportunity to practice them in shorter intervals, you know, the 3 to 5, then 7 to 10. And then some days you're going to be sitting on that rower, like you said, for quite a few minutes. But that's how you develop that capacity to know that when a test comes up and it's 19 minutes long, exactly what pace you can hold over the course of 25 rounds in a workout.
And in such a mental sport, desensitizing yourself to certain stimulus is so fucking important because, okay, theoretically, we just snapped our fingers and made that happen for you, and you are now holding a better pace the entire time. But how quickly are you getting on and off the rower? Are you mentally prepared to be holding 1,500 calories per hour? And in the last 5 strokes, you're like, how quickly can I pick up this fucking wall ball? Like when you start to not care as much about it, you don't signal your body to be as stressed, to jack your heart rate up, to panic while you're working out.
And we just see so many athletes get held back with what you just said there. They just treat the rower as if like, oh, it's just kind of there.
Yeah, it's like the 200-meter run in the Metcon. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna run out there. It's kind of a recovery. It's like wrong bitch.
Not if you're racing.
Yeah,
not if you're racing. And most of you that come here are trying to race. So throughout the week, you'll notice that there are 3 mandatory pieces and typically 2 non-mandatory bitch work pieces. And the idea as we're getting closer and closer to the season is that you're either working on your general physical preparedness. So you're going to be doing long, medium, short, different machines, or you're going to be doing a little bit more personalization. And it really, again, kind of goes back to the variable training method of like, what does your body actually need? Do you need just variance because you don't have confidence in many different different machines, time domains, styles of workouts? Or do you have a very obvious glaring weakness when you notice that the assault bike comes up and it's a sprint that you just can't touch the gear that everybody else can? Well, guess what? You aren't skipping any assault bike days. Or do you notice that when they put these two movements together, like if a row comes after a ski, you're all of a sudden 10 seconds slower than you are when it's the opposite? Another opportunity to kind of work on those things. So, you want to use the mandatory days to kind of really hammer the things we just talked about, making sure that your aerobic row gets developed and that you kind of push yourself to that dark place in the run. But outside of that, it's, are you addressing just general fitness requirements that you need, or is there something very specific that you need to address? And, you have that optional pick 0 to 2 pieces. If you have a glaring weakness in your fitness, I'm going to tell you, you don't need another, toe to bar power snatch workout. You need to sit your butt on an assault bike.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, if you are serious about competing in the sport of fitness this year, you absolutely have to take the bitch work seriously. And that should be a blanket statement all year round, but you've got effectively 2 months to really dial that in before it becomes a little bit more about the CrossFit specific side of things. But the bitch work is how you get fit. And you have to spend your time on that machine, on the rower, getting yourself to a place where when it is rowing wall balls and toes to bar, you can just be moving continuously. That is the way that you get to a point where you turn every workout into kind of that cardio feel, where it's just how quickly can I bounce from movement to movement, is when you go into phase 3 and you say, I'm going to really be diligent about picking my weaknesses, especially when it comes to machines. And it's not exclusively about weakness on a machine. It is your aerobic capacity as a whole and how that is holding you back or going to allow you to succeed this year.
I think that the athletes who choose that non-mandatory aerobic piece as their second aerobic piece of the week is sort of self-explanatory. My question for you guys is, we talk about one of the sort of hallmarks of our program from day one was you got to take your medicine once a week. Mm-hmm. Every other week, there's an opportunity for someone to take their medicine twice in a week. And I want to know from you guys, when is that appropriate and necessary for an athlete? What sort of athlete would think to do something like that? Because I know for me personally, I need it, but it's also fairly tough on my central nervous system, even more than lifting is, if you really go there. And for anybody that's not used to us talking about taking your medicine, that's that if it says send, we mean it.
It's the bike sprint, the row sprint, that sort of shitty thing. Yeah, my immediate mind went to, what is this going to do to the athlete, both mentally and like physiologically? Yeah. You get a big athlete, like thinking Gustav, one of my remote athletes, who he's a big dude, he's already really proficient on the machines. So I'm like, as much as I want, I know that this is hugely beneficial for you. I can't obliterate you, once or twice a week with these sprints that are just going to leave you flat out. You're not going to be able to train the rest of the day doing other things that might be more important. So while I definitely think that there's a lot of value in that, I think it's understanding what that's going to do to you. And, if that's, make sure it's probably one of your last pieces of the day, or maybe you've only got, skill work or like accessory to do after, something that you don't need to worry about focusing on quite as heavily from a like work hard standpoint. You can focus on it more mentally, but don't skip your sprinties. Don't skip your send days.
The only layer I'd add to that is just know yourself a little bit more. Know if you have this glaring weakness. Know if you need to do that, and ask yourself every time me and my buddies line up the assault bikes and go head to head on the one that's last, maybe I need to do an extra one. In addition to that, we go back to the variable training system. You have to know, everything that you do is either a deposit or a withdrawal, and what's that going to lead for the rest of your phase. Yeah. And there are plenty of athletes that sometimes get done the week of training and are like, you know what? Haven't quite scratched that itch, or I have a little bit left in the tank, and I know that this isn't going to leave me so messed up, but I'm going to, feel accomplished throughout the week by ending on like this one last day. Maybe you give yourself, instead of like the 6 or 7 or 5 or 6 sprints that you normally do, you give yourself 1 or 2 to check that gear, feel accomplished without, again, thrashing yourself for the following week the following phase.
Yeah, I think the other third layer, I guess, is so you've got
I got a fourth.
We've got generally like kind of two athletes. One is the high power output sort of athlete who can really hammer it, maybe pin the bike, kind of max wattage, like that. You know, you could go harder, but the bike's not going to let you. Or you've got the slow twitch athlete who can run at the same pace all day, but try to ask them to go 2 or 3 RPMs higher on an assault bike for a sprint. And it's like, I can't do it. So athlete one, that high CNS athlete, you might not necessarily be able to or be looking at increasing your peak wattage or just how high you're able to ramp the rower or bike up, but more evaluating what's my recovery like between those sprints, because that's more beneficial to you than trying to eke out, you know, an extra calorie over the course of a 15-second sprint that's going to crush you. Alternatively, you've got the slow twitch athlete who, you need to make sure that you are trying to really focusing on, you know, us here, we use the wattage as the assault bike metric. I know a lot of people use RPMs, but
grow up.
What?
Sorry.
I mean, I agree.
I tell Holly every time he says it, I say, I don't know what that means.
What's an RPM on the assault bike? But the, but like the slower twitch athlete, like you need to be working on, among other things, trying to get that peak output up, because you need to have that gear as well. So there's two ways to look at that. The slow twitch athlete pays more attention to, did my peak, you know, is my peak wattage generally trending upward? Am I making a change there? Your high power output athlete, how am I recovering between sprints that are extremely demanding on my body and my CNS?
I don't want to jump in. Do your layer first, and then if it doesn't get scratched.
Layer 4?
Yeah, what's important here to clarify is we are talking about 3 days and 7 weeks. Like that's why I brought it up, because if it was more often, it shouldn't be in our programming. So it's 3 total days within 7 weeks. And I would just say to people, the boxes that we're trying to check off, number one, this is the person that definitely needs to choose at least one of these 3, is you don't go there. As an athlete, you don't go there. Because we know of quite a few athletes that don't go there. You need to prove to yourself that you're willing to inflict pain on yourself on purpose as a fucking sick practical joke. And then the other is, once you've broken through that barrier, how are you actually performing? You know, if we're asking for 5, and you are a fast twitch athlete, number 1 is, you know, 50 cals, and number 5 is 6. It's a problem, and you need to work on it. And you need to work on, like, maybe your send is a more controlled. I have no idea. I can't think of anybody in this room. Maybe your send is the controlled send. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, not showing off, like, watch this. And then it's like, well, I did watch and you sucked by the end. So I think that part is important.
The only thing I was going to add, because I think there are going to be people out there who listen to this and go, what am I then? I don't know I don't feel like I fit neatly in either one of those
Zach
categories.
Galifianakis equation.
Like, which one am I?
Card counting.
You know, one of my favorite ways, anytime we have affiliate class, do the bike sprints, because everyone fucking hates those days. And as a coach, I love them because I think it's a great application of all the hard work that people put in. If you're someone that does a bike sprint and you notice that you're very consistent from round to round, congratulations, you're a slow twitch athlete, and you probably need another day of this medicine every once in a while. If you're an athlete that notices that your first score is awesome and your later scores suck, sorry, you're fast twitch, and you might not want to consider doing these pieces too often because they're going to mess with you. So I like to use
reach and sustain for me is what makes my send better.
Yeah, exactly. So I just say, just make sure that you kind of, again, think about as many data points as possible. You start to notice these trends, and when you do these type of pieces, they're telltale signs of where you currently are. And if you read into them enough, they can be blueprints for how do I fix these problems. Like you just said, you're going to make more change in your ability to send by doing more reach and sustain paces than just sending it more times a week and then just seeing what happens.
How much do we care about people improving? We've been talking for 40 minutes. We have not brought up CrossFit. Hunter, would you like to talk about Metcons?
I would like to talk about CrossFit in the sport of CrossFit.
So prepared.
When we're 7 weeks, when we think about Metcons, and I was talking to one of our athletes at the gym the other day. They were like, "Hey, I improved this Metcon by 36 seconds. Is that like significant? Is that statistically significant?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Like, and this is also an affiliate athlete, so we're like the metrics for success are a little bit different than a competitive athlete. But the idea of kind of, you said it, I think for phase 1, it was experience, skill, capacity. A lot of it has to do with learning. People will do an open workout and then 2 days later crush their time, not necessarily because they got fitter over the course of 2 days, but they had the experience, they know how it feels, they've developed some skill over the course of, or they know how to better apply the skill that they have, and then they express it. For us, when we have the luxury of a 7-week phase to work on that, obviously the experience of, round 1 versus round 2 is significant. But when we think about starting to develop the skill work, which is kind of how we try to bias those Metcon pieces, where we say, okay, this phase, you're going to do double dumbbell overhead walking lunge and some shitty burpees to a 12-inch target. It's going to be fast, and some of you are going to rifle through it and hate yourself. Others are going to it's not going to feel as bad because you can't get the dumbbells locked out overhead, or you've never done the movement before. You don't have that experience to express your capacity in. We are artificially limiting you. So we've got, for the phase, dumbbell, some of that double dumbbell overhead walking lunge. And before you say like, oh, it doesn't, like, we don't see that, we're not going to see that in the open. It's like, well, 1, you don't know that. 2, there's about 600,000 different lunging variations that could and have shown up in the open, whether it's a barbell and quarterfinals, or like regionals, that sort of competition, where we've got kind of that odd dumbbell implement paired with like a shitty movement, where the goal is to like have people racing in the last 50 feet of the overhead walking lunge and see who drops the dumbbell on their head first because they were trying too hard. Like all of that is kind of built into the test. And then over the course of the 6 weeks, or like 5 training weeks, you have the opportunity to figure out how to put literally how to stack the dumbbells overhead. Oh, maybe it's a mobility thing, which, man, I would love to see this movement in maybe not the open anymore, but like the quarterfinals before athletes get to semifinals, because there's so many athletes who are able to.
That's a prediction for me. I felt like that it was put on blast at Granite Games to the point where maybe Castro noticed.
I hope it is. It's the same, and it's the same argument I have with things like pistols and stuff. CrossFit athletes are exceptional. Right. CrossFit athletes are exceptionally good at finding ways to work around their deficiencies, but that's one of those movements where it's like, oh, like your T-spine is one entire vertebrae, like. Enjoy those double dumbbell overhead walking lunge. Oh, you managed to neglect your poor hip or shoulder mobility. Like enjoy those single arm dumbbell overhead squats, that sort of thing. And I think that's I wish there was more of that, because there are a lot of athletes who skirt by in that regard.
And the thing here that gets lost on people so often, and I hope they start to take notice, is we just did the kettlebell snatch. Sherb referenced it at the beginning of this podcast. It's very obvious that if you're PRing in a 5 or 6 minute workout by a minute and you are extremely fit, that you improved your skill within the kettlebell snatch itself. Yep. Now, what people sometimes don't wrap their mind around is you are learning how to get better at things in general. And the muscle up and the handstand push up and the chest to bar and all these movements are, the dead horse that's getting beaten anyways, because we aren't creating a new perspective. There's no lens that we can see it through where we can get better. But maybe it is the stuff Hunter was referencing. Maybe it is your mobility. Maybe it is, damn sure going to need overhead mobility and midline stability and all that stuff within the open, right? And that's being put on display here. So we want you to get better at weird shit so that you can create this sort of system to go in and say, oh, I know how to get better at a muscle up. Like there's this crazy angle between my shoulder and my torso and my backswing. Is that good?
Yeah. And that test, the conditioning test, it's pretty short with the double dumbbell lunge. It's like, that's not, like I was saying, kind of the beginning of the rant was like 7 weeks is you're going to do CrossFit and conditioning over 7 weeks. So in 7 weeks is a relatively short period of time to actually show meaningful change in your like actual physiological capacity and your energy systems, but it's plenty of time to show change in kind of your capacity and skill development and prove to yourself that, yeah, you can figure out how to do this movement. Because there are those occasions in competition where it's like, who can figure this shit out the fastest? And when you have kind of that stable of not necessarily odd movements, but the experience to develop a skill or, translate it to something else, that's super helpful. Alternatively, we've got kind of an interval toes to bar sort of test. And this to me is more about kind of getting us in the mode of competition for, in kind of that feel. It's power snatching, rowing, and toes to bar, kind of a traditional grippy, super grippy combo. And that's like, hey, you see that at least once per open where it's like, hey, you have to stop because you can't hold on to something any longer. Overall, like that's the test itself, again, a little bit less important. We do have kind of a toes to bar weekly or once a week sets of toes to bar where we're looking to increase that capacity. It's not super sexy, but it works super well, as is the case with most things that are pretty effective. But again, the goal here is kind of exposing you to something that you are likely to see coming up in kind of the competition season, but also just developing kind of the wherewithal of how to attack something when it's like you can't escape the fact that you're holding on to something for, what is it, like 24 minutes, whatever that test is.
24 hours. Sorry.
24 days.
The mental side of that too is so incredibly important. I have like maybe I do get to contribute to this because I used to work out 10 years ago. I was doing
a workout.
Yeah, I could do that. No, power snatch.
I was thinking the hang clean and jerk toe to bar row.
Toe to bar, box jump. I'm talking like 2012.
Push up.
Is it push up?
No, you're thinking toe to bar, power snatch, deadlift. It was like 5.
Nope. No, it was box jump, toe to bar. I can see the workout happening at the original OG gym. It could have been the push up one.
No, it was power. Wasn't it power clean? Wasn't it 15 box jumps, 10 toes to bar, 5 power cleans? Yes.
And it was Friday Night Lights, and I was in the zone, and I was doing great. And my brother was my judge, and I kicked down a rep early on my toe to bar, and I was ahead of everyone that was there. I feel like I was ahead of like Cody and I was like having the performance of a lifetime. Somehow I found endurance one night, and
there you are.
And that was it. It was over. That moment where I allowed like the world to sort of come in, and me being like, I did fucking 9. And he's like, you did 8. I probably did 8. Like, and I didn't disagree with him in real life after the workout was over, but I remember what that did to my flow in that moment. And this workout is one of those ones where I want an athlete to think about that, to think about like, my forearms are going to burn. So fucking what?
That shit's gonna hit the fan, but who cares?
It doesn't hurt anywhere near as bad as your lungs burning, or you know what I mean? Like
after the workout, you try harder.
Exactly. So like prepare yourself mentally for that workout to say like, it's going to be sort of this odd pain that's happening, but it's not going to make it so that you can't do the movement. Like that's one of those grippy ones. You got to stay locked in.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
And then, so just to kind of wrap up the conditioning here, again, we are slowly approaching that competition season. You have to understand phase, as much as CrossFit is, CrossFit conditioning and intervals is the bread and butter of CrossFit. 6 out of 10 pieces every week are optional. So understand, I got that right?
Yep.
6 out of 10 are off. So there's 4 mandatory. That's it. Less than 1 mandatory Metcon or interval per day, which means the personalization aspect and knowing kind of like we were saying about the bitch work and getting comfortable on the machines. Like if there's ever a time to kind of like take those choices more seriously as an athlete looking to, shore up weaknesses before it's almost too late into the season, it's now. So understanding, take a look at the optional pieces. Don't just look at the movements and be like, I need to work on my power cleans. It's like there's 5 power cleans at 95 pounds. Like you don't need to work on your barbell cycling. It's choose the look at the stimulus, look at the feel of the workout and be like, like I have to stop and kick down every time there's a muscular overload sort of piece because my muscles don't work. Like maybe that's something I need to work on. I really, really suck at moving from movement to movement when the reps are really tiny, and it's so easy that the only thing that's slowing me down is my willingness to move to the next movement in kind of those cardio feeling workouts. Use those. It isn't just, hey, choose the piece that has the movements that you suck at the most, because more often than not, especially like an open or a quarterfinals workout, it wasn't necessarily the movements that slowed you down. It was how the workout was constructed. It wasn't your grip. It wasn't your toes to bar that failed. It was the fact that you didn't spend enough time dealing with the muscular fatigue and working on, flushing waste out of your forearms and biceps, that sort of thing. So don't just look at the workouts from what movements do I need to get better at? Take a look at the stimulus and the feel and the pacing, even the pacing. Like I'm not very good at going hard and then slowing down. Like, well, choose the reach piece, choose the send CrossFit piece and get better there.
True. What about front squats?
Oh, yeah. So our in-wad lift for the phase. We didn't talk about did you talk about front squat?
I sprinkled
6 seconds. You sprinkled it.
Yeah.
All right, so
I teased it.
I'll pour it. We got front squat.
Twas teased.
Man, how many times, question for the group, how many times a year do we get asked about a front squat phase? 400,000?
More than I would like.
I was gonna say that
more times than there are Shivas.
When you hear the front squat's gonna be back on the blog, you can just assume that it's like this time of year. It's almost like the leaves falling in the trees. Like the only time you're ever gonna see some, a lot of front squat stuff from Misfit Athletics in this application is gonna be around the time when we actually have to recall upon it, because like we've said on 400 podcasts before this, that like the skill transfer does need to occur. You do need a front squat, but you're gonna get stronger back squatting, and every year we prove it to people by back squatting for a majority of the year and then doing a front squat occasionally here and there.
What do the kids say? Don't at me.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay, boomer, I think.
Big toe and heel are on the ground.
Never heard of her.
Yeah, what's that?
Your knees track outside of your feet. Your hips sit as close to in between your feet as possible. You have a full grip on the bar.
You lost me.
And you wind your elbows in such that they are inside of your hands, and instead of trying to drive up the whole time so that you're overextended, we drive in. If you're doing all those things and your front squat is not getting better, you may at me, and I will personally help you get better at front squatting with a strength program. But
it's gonna back squat.
I'm gonna send you a video of my index finger around the bar.
It is a skill
elbows
based
through the roof
lift.
Is this right?
It's a skill-based lift. It's a skill-based
lift. The front squat.
You heard it from him.
You're gonna see the front squat in an interval test. It's gonna kick everybody in the proverbial nuts.
If you have ascending reps and weights, just know that it's always Hunter doing it to you. 9 out of 10 times.
It's descending. The weight goes up though.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Okay. Yeah. So the in-wad lifting, again, as we get closer to the season, next phase, you've got your back squat. Drew, you had to, pour one out for Drew, moving the volume back squat phase like 2 weeks. We moved it, but this phase, we're developing the front squat, but we're doing it under fatigue. It's one of the only, aside from, I guess I can't say we've never seen it, because in quarterfinals, there was a 4 rep max, which still makes it a skill-based lift because nobody was grinding through. Most people aren't grinding through 4. You can grind through 1.
Especially when their elbows
on the floor.
Touch their elbow, touch their knees.
Touching the ground.
Yeah. So, and then just like last phase with that in-wad deadlift, the percentage work that, you guys had, we're going to kind of ratchet that in there as one of the interval pieces per week, where you've got front squats, whether it's off the floor, out of a rack, something like that. I had to write. It upsets me. It upset me how many times in our Google Sheet cell that I had to write bar is taken from the floor. It's like, unless we specify the bar is taken from the floor. It's like a 135 front squat and a Metcon. People are just like, are these out of a rack or off the floor?
Yes.
They're off the ceiling. I'm sick of your shit. Okay.
Hunty hit Sherby at the dinner table. All right. Take it easy.
Okay.
Barbell's on the ceiling. Go get it.
Specify, but your interval test is taken off the floor. But again, make you tired.
I'm going to make like 19 fake accounts and ask you
what happens to your positioning when you're tired, when you're breathing hard, and then you have to front squat something that's heavy. I don't know. We're going to find out in our interval test and then over the course of 5 weeks.
You need a barbell on the ceiling.
I'm going to install one on your ceiling.
So I think
Thank you.
Again, because there's the potential for new people to be listening to this podcast, we haven't referenced variance that much.
We don't do that here.
We haven't really talked about it. If us degenerates have a Bible, it just says variance on the front for like the aliens from Toy Story, or the squishy things. Yeah. We look up at the claw and we say variance. That is our guiding principle.
You make that graphic?
That is the three of us looking up at variance claw.
But just our heads on the little alien bodies.
Yes.
Variance.
So we just did this entire podcast about how ultra specific and psychotic we are about drawing the connections, and there is no Pepe Sylvia and all that.
Pennsylvania.
I still don't believe you that you knew that before.
Yeah, dog.
All right. Anyways, so the way we can explain it is because Hunter just said we have those 2 tests, and then we pull those pieces out. They slide over columns in our spreadsheet to skill, and then you have 5 weeks straight of 10 pieces that are based on variance. I mean, that's the whole phase is based on variance outside of these small biases that we pull out of Metcons, right? So the meat and potatoes is still all of those pieces. And then further, how do you have variance within your own personal program? 6 out of the 10 conditioning pieces are non-mandatory and are there for you to make your programming work better for you specifically. So as you know, as CrossFit, as a separate thing at the affiliate level, whatever it is, variance is sort of the guiding principle and kind of everything. It's basically the whole story. There's little bits and pieces depending on, is your gym a competitor's gym or whatever.
Well,
but then when we go into it's just like basically organized chaos would be one of the easiest ways to explain it. As we jump over to what we're talking about, we have a ridiculously detailed plan that takes the entire year, but then the Metcons that are built into it, inside of the structure, the things you're actually doing
variance
day after day after day, week after week is variance. Every single one of them. We're not biasing anything within those Metcons other than biasing the idea of variance, which I don't know. How many layers deep are we now?
Think on that.
Dream within a dream within a dream.
Know. Fuck. Leo, please.
Anything else, gents?
Nah. I think we hit it.
Yeah, we good.
Phase
3.
Ted,
start.
who's the guy who says it's time at the UFC things? It's time. How cool would it?
That was pretty close. Yeah.
I didn't want to. Basically, I'm screaming into Ted's ear. If I scream right now,
do it.
I'm not doing it.
That goes with no headphones on anymore.
Sure, do it.
Here's what I can say. I think every single, not just every phase, but every day and every week and every workout that we get closer and closer to the season, it's high time for someone to make that decision to join the Misfit community and do what we're doing, right? So like it will be in phase 4 and then beyond that, it is time to jump into what we're doing. And I would say the biggest tip would be that buy-in encompassing not just everything that we just talked about and how you're personally improving, but getting into social media and getting into the community. Either you're on Sugar Watt or you're on the app and you're, sort of talking to other people and talking smack. That buy-in and then just that little piece of community that everybody needs personally. And you know, just being part of something that's bigger than you, it's going to be easier on the days that it's really fucking hard for you to go in there and get your work done when you are part of something bigger. And you know, it's sort of an ad, but you know, we do the 2 weeks for free for a reason. We want you to be able to go in and see what we're doing with absolutely no risk. You sign up, you decide whether you're, you know, your MFT or Hatchet or Teens or Masters or anywhere, and you get 2 weeks to just dig in and figure out what you're trying to do. And it's working.
I was going to say I was done, but I lied. You know, we have a friend of ours from New Jersey who had a gym, CrossFit Clue, and one of the things that a shirt that she had made is like, it's really cool to give a shit. And to me, that kind of fits right in line with what you were just saying. That, like, you know, if you're someone that's been on the fence, not fully committed, ready to jump, you know, dive headfirst into what we do and what we're about, if you can convince yourself to do so, you're going to find that you're with a bunch of other people who are also in the same mindset as you, want to see you succeed. And that's, you know, our daily goal when we put out podcasts and programming and everything that we do is to see you succeed. And, you know, we want you to be part of the fold, part of the community. And, you know, I really do think that, like, whenever I hear that phrase, like, it's really cool to give a shit, I get like goosebumps, because when you have that, that can be your North Star. So that day that you don't want to go in and do your thing, like you just said, you reach out to one of your buddies that you've met through Misfit programming and you say, hey, you know, I'm thinking about doing this, or maybe I'm thinking about skipping this piece. And that person's going to be like, nah, man, don't do that. You've been working too hard. You have bigger goals that to let one day knock you off your path. So, you know, it's really cool to give a shit. And I want to say thanks to Cat Lewis for that phrase, because I really do like it. And I think it applies beautifully to kind of what you just said.
That was good enough.
All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast, and thank you to our show sponsors, properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on the best pre- and post-workout supplements in the game. PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit. SharpenTheAxeCo.com. Use the code word Keala, Keala. You save 10%, and we donate 10% to the Keala Foundation. And if you wanna jump in, MisfitAthletics.com or the Sugar Wad Marketplace. And if you're an affiliate athlete or your affiliate owner, teammisfit.com and the Sugar Wad Marketplace. As always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let us know what you would like to hear next for an episode. Or if you have a guest in mind that you think we should have on, and we'll see you next time.